Hello, my name is Brandon Crawford, and this is my PowerPoint presentation for the history of Microsoft Windows. This is for my CIS 140 class. So here we go. So, in order to better understand the history of Windows, we had to start where it all began. So it all started off when Bill Gates and his friend Paul Allen came up with the idea to make Microsoft back in April of 1975. At this time, they were still attending the University of Harvard, and Windows first started off as a MS-DOS, and eventually they would go on to sell. And what I mean by sell is I really mean licensed the Windows operating system to IBM to better compete with Apple and their operating system. So the first Windows was introduced in November of 1985. It was a MS-DOS operating system, and it was a command line prompt navigation. So, in this sense, your best friend was a keyboard. You couldn't use a mouse, so it was all just keyboard and the screen. After that, Windows got another update which launched in December of 1987. And with this update, you could actually minimize and maximize the window, something that we're typically used to today. We just double click the top of the window and it'll maximize or minimize the screen for us. As well as it introduced Microsoft Word and Excel. And as we know now, those two uh, softwares are something that we use pretty much every day, whether it's at home, whether it's at work. It is something that everybody uses. And with this update, it also added the control panel, which again, we use that today when we're trying to update our system settings or anything like that. Afterwards, Windows got another update in 1990, which introduced multitasking so we could do multiple things at once. It brought color into the operating system, and the and in 1992, we could finally start to use mouse in MS-DOS. So we were able to use the mouse and click around in the MS-DOS system. Afterwards, in Windows 95, which this was a huge update for Microsoft Windows, this is where we could actually see graphical user interface. This was more user friendly towards its users. It introduced the start button, which again, this is something that we use every single day. It's how we access most of I would say our apps that we use now, system settings, all of that stuff. It also introduced the plug and play, so we could, insert a USB device, flash drive, and use it that way. It also introduced the taskbar, something that it's where our apps are typically located at. So if we open, for example, Internet Explorer, it'll show up in our taskbar. If we open up file history, it'll open up our file history. Afterwards, we would get Windows XP, and this was introduced back in 2001. It was another visual overhaul. It gave a more modern look to it, something that was more appealing towards its users. But the problem with the Windows XP was that there was a lot of security flaws because it was by default the firewall was disabled. Um, so this was a really bad security flaw on Windows XP. But again, it was a very appealing operating system to a lot of users. Afterwards, we would get Windows Vista, which was introduced back in 2007. Again, it got another visual update, but it wasn't. It was pretty much the same, but at the same time, it got a more modern look to it. Um, And with this update, it was focused on the security flaws that were brought by Windows XP, as well as this Windows Vista actually introduced Windows Defender, which again, this is a very useful tool that we use today. Afterwards, we would get the Windows 7 update, which was introduced back in October of 2009. And again, it got another visual update, but it just brought a modern look to it. Again, as time flies by, we're getting used to the Windows user interface just change with every major update. And with Windows 7, it was a lot faster than its previous updates. So that was very appealing towards Windows 7. Windows 7 was actually used by a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses were used to this Windows 7. And with the next update, I know a lot of people opted not to update to this next Windows update because of a lot of things. So with our next update, it was Windows 8 and 8.1. This was a massive visual overhaul. It got rid of the start button, which, that was something that we as users have been used to since 1995. This update was catered towards more the touchscreen users, app users. The whole entire layout was just, it was meant for essentially just to be used on a tablet, and not a lot of people like that. So after a year of Windows 8 being launched, Microsoft decided to launch Windows 8.1, which brought back the start button and brought back the taskbar. So it was something that users were familiar with, and it was just a lot better than Windows 8 was. And now we're here at Windows 10, something that we're using today. It was introduced in 2015. Some of the looks to Windows 8, such as how the apps looked, made it into Windows 10. But it still kept, the start button, taskbar. It's very familiar user interface. It's just, again, an updated visual. To make it more modern in what we're used to today. And it's adding a lot of new features as well, such as Cortana. And if you're familiar with Cortana, that's just the voice operated system. So you could ask Cortana a question and she would give you an answer, similar to what Siri is to Apple and what Alexa is to Amazon. And that is the history of Windows here. I thank you for watching this video.